Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoda Bernard, founding managing director of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education and the assistant chair of the music education department at Berklee College of Music. And I am proud to present this podcast featuring disabled artists and arts educators. We are inviting artists with disabilities to be guest hosts for the Able Voices podcast. Today's guest host is Jeremy Andrew Davis. Jeremy Andrew Davis is a multi-hyphenate writer, film director, disability advocate and representation consultant, entrepreneur, and social media content creator. He is on a mission to transform disability representation, shaping the cultures of tomorrow through the stories of today. Jeremy draws on his neurodivergent, multi-disabled, non-binary identity to broaden society's cultural horizons through epic stories that immerse audiences into the experiences of marginalized people who must odyssey through a hostile world to demonstrate their power.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeremy Andrew Davis, your guest host for this Able Voices podcast episode. This is my first time guest hosting a podcast ever, so I'm really excited that you're tuning in. Today, I am thrilled to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Miles Levin. Miles is an award-winning writer, director, and disability advocate. He sits on the board of 2 epilepsy foundations, and his short film, which is now becoming a feature film, Under the Lights, has sparked a worldwide movement surrounding epilepsy portrayal on screen. So after a lifetime of living with epilepsy, he is very proud to have turned it into something socially beneficial and encourages storytelling as a means of breaking stigmas and improving quality of life. And as a filmmaker myself, I completely agree with that. Miles, welcome to the Able Voices podcast.
Thank you for having me on the Able Voices podcast, Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you here. To start, I would like to play a short audio clip from your short film, which, as I said, is also becoming a feature, to give the audience a taste of this amazing work.
How many beers did it take to get you into the girls' bathroom?
I don't drink. I have seizures. It's blindfold. I thought it would help with the light. I guess not. You can't tell anyone. You can't tell anyone, please.
Of course.
She's saving a dance for me.
Why don't you just hang here for a bit? Hey, no. Wait. Please come back. Wait, no, stop. If you stay in here, I'll talk to you.
Wow, that was really cool. And of course, I have a behind the scenes look at this. I had the honor to be a beta reader for the feature screenplay, and it's such an incredible story. Miles, tell us more about Under the Lights.
So I had been making films for years and years before Under the Lights, and it had been suggested to me for a very long time of tell a epilepsy story, make a story out of your personal experience. And I really strongly rejected that because to me, art was this wonderful way of having something about my identity that was far and removed from, a darker or, we'll say more unsatisfying part of my experience. And when I finally decided to look at it another way, it ended up being the most important decision I ever made. And the way that came about was that I had been volunteering with my local epilepsy foundation for years and years and years as a camp counselor at this camp for kids who have seizures. And it struck me that year after year, I would meet kids, teenagers, they'd be like 14, 15, 13. They'd say they'd never made a friend before. And they would recount these awful, horrible horrible experiences of being ostracized and treated, as less than othered. And I was really disappointed in attending all these epilepsy awareness events to realize that there was really no awareness taking place. They were solidarity events for sure. There was fundraising happening. There was fist bumping going on, which is great, but not a soul is buying a ticket for one of these things that's ever heard of, that has any questions about epilepsy. If you're going to an epilepsy gala, if you're walking to end epilepsy, you're there because you already know a great deal about it.
Yeah. You
So
already
until you
care.
yeah, exactly. So, but what is, Jeremy, a exception in our culture? What is the meeting ground where people will actually go out of their way to seek out voices that they haven't heard from before?
Art, and very specifically film stories.
Yeah. So I I'm not going to have much success handing pamphlets out to strangers, but I sure can have a lot of success saying, I want you to watch something entertaining in your living room, and it's going to tell you a great deal about people like me. And I I believe that, the, the drastic suicide rate, the homelessness rate, depression, all these things that disproportionately affect people with disabilities, namely, epilepsy in this case, it's very, very little to do with actually having seizures. It has everything to do with the way we treat each other. And that's something that I could do something about. I can't participate in the cure, but I can participate in an increase in the quality of life for people like myself. So I made this short, and I was thinking, oh, this will be this cute way to put, someone on screen that makes us all feel seen and makes a difference. And I was just not prepared for the results. I completely underestimated the power of something like that.
Wow.
Fan art starts coming in from around the world before the short film. We're talking about a short film, not even released. I start getting calls from people saying, I've never heard of epilepsy. I want to do my class project on this. I want to do my debate performance on this. I want to, write a rap song. Like, it just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And sure enough, I realized this wasn't really much. It was less of a movie and more of a movement. The amount of people that decided it was time to tell their stories, who otherwise would have remained closeted, was really staggering. And so that's why I set out to do the full length movie.
Oh, every time I hear this story, it just gives me chills. This is the power of storytelling and the power of art, and I'm so glad that this film is being made. Tell us how did you come up with the concept of, let's start with the short, because you made the short and with plans to do a feature, or was that like, oh wait, this should be a feature? How did the short and all of that come together?
So I knew that I wanted to do the feature. I didn't really have a plan for getting there. I just knew that I had this lofty idea that should take place. It was after doing the short that I realized how imminent and important that need was.
Yeah.
But I was asked that question before doing the short. You want to make a feature, just make the feature. And I said, no, I want to make something awesome. I want to make something that is my best. And if I go and I do that right now, it's not going to be my best because I'm not going to have, the perfect toolbox. But if I make a great short and I nail it, at least in my own perspective, right? It's very subjective. But if I make something I'm really proud of and it does very well, then I will learn all the things that I want to know that will make a much, much better feature. So I'm really glad I did that. I'm really, really glad I took myself to school first.
Yeah. And here you are directing your first feature, which is amazing.
Pretty wild.
So tell us the concept of Under the Lights. What is the story?
So Under the Lights, the short and the feature, is the story of 17-year-old Sam, a boy with epilepsy so desperate to feel like a regular kid, he goes to prom knowing that the lights will make him have a seizure.
Ooh.
I've said that so many hundreds of thousands of times. I can't even begin to tell you. But yes.
But the concept is so great because, like, this is the struggle that so many people with all kinds of disabilities have, but specifically in this case, epilepsy, where it's so hard to make friends. It's so hard to have normal human life experiences, like experiencing what it's like to be a regular kid. And so I love that this character that you created is so desperate to feel both normalcy of life and acceptance that he's like, well, I'm going to expose myself to this experience knowing that it's going to negatively affect my disability, but that's worth the price because of the need of the social connection. I
Right.
think that's beautiful.
Thank you. It's I wanted to make something that meets on a common ground with general audiences. We'll call that for a moment people who don't have disabilities, or people who don't have disabilities yet, right?
Right.
Right. So that sounds so threatening.
Yes.
People who don't have
Don't have them
disabilities
yet.
yet. Um but for me, everybody knows what it's like to feel left out.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what it's like to feel misunderstood. And so the thing that I have said is I don't necessarily need an audience member. It'd be very cool if we could pull this off, but I don't necessarily need them to live in my shoes and feel these exact feelings with all these exact points of reference. I need them to make the mental connection that they've felt these feelings too. These are universal human feelings. That's enough to make the transition from, oh God, epilepsy, what's that, to, oh yeah, I saw something about that once, which is it's enough. That's enough. I'm not asking for a lot from the
Yeah.
world here. I'm asking for access to the human brain and not the lizard brain, right? And all that requires is a little bit of empathy, a better point of reference. And so things like prom and these visuals like this are great for that because they are coming of age moments. They're rituals. They're things that most people remember valuing.
They have a connection to it already. You're already speaking their language. Yeah.
Yeah. Ideally. I think that if I made a hospital drama or something and it's bogged down and all this really diagnosis specific jargon and things like that, it's starts to ask more of the audience. And so I wanted to make it very simple. This kid just wants to feel like other kids, but furthermore, the person that he meets, takes place in a bathroom we built, right? The girl that he meets who's in there, who's also having a terrible night, is also, they're not seeing eye to eye, but at the end of the day, they're feeling the same feelings. And one experience is not necessarily more difficult than the other, although one is, has an element of medical danger involved.
Right.
So that was my approach.
Yeah, that scene is so beautifully done because it very much connects us to the experience of like, oh, like I don't know what it's like to have the potential of having a seizure and the fears and the medical stuff and all the stuff that comes along with that, but I can identify with that because I'm being shown this connection to the same emotions in somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it just all ties together so well. And I'm thinking, like, for those kids at your camp that they say they've never had a friend before with the bullying and all these horror stories, those people who may have made these people's lives miserable may see your film and have a lot harder time picking on somebody with epilepsy because they've seen your film, or at least
Yes.
they've gotten one step in that direction where they're like, oh yeah, they're like me, but they have this other experience.
There's so many facets to that. There's so many ways that storytelling can make these things easier and better and improve quality of life. Because there's the avenue that you just described. There's also a person who doesn't have the energy to, or the current willpower to say, like, I'm gonna explain this to everybody. It gets so
Right.
exhausting. It
Yeah.
gets so exhausting. So to be able to say, and we did see this with a short, people doing this. Okay, so I have this condition. I want you to watch this thing.
Yeah.
That's my explanation for everything that I have to say to you. I
Right.
just want you to watch this thing instead of hearing my diatribe that I just cannot do again.
I can't
And
tell you for the thousandth person that has just asked me what it's like. Yeah, it gets so exhausting because all your social interactions become just explaining this aspect of your life that isn't who you are. It affects how you interact with the world, at least in terms of epilepsy. But yeah, like that's such a profound resource to be able to give to people to say, yeah, go watch this. It's not my job to explain myself to you. Um, yeah, that's beautiful. So you had said that you've been making films for a long time before ever taking on Under the Lights. What got you into filmmaking? Did you go into film education for that? What's your arts education experience? And tell us that story.
so I was a theater kid, and I was in all the school plays, and I loved that. I loved acting. And it didn't really, for years and years, I've told people that I didn't make films until high school. But looking back, I always wanted to hang out at friends' houses that had a Mac, because the Mac would have iMovie on it and a webcam, and I could mess around and adjust my voice and edit and do special effects things. And I loved that. And that was terribly boring for my friends. Just sit there and watch Miles at the keyboard. But I loved it. And I would make, little attempted animations of my Legos and things like that. I had no idea how any of that worked, of course. So it was just terrible. But in high school, we had this class where we made these 1 minute short films. And we made these 1 minute short films in high school. And the teacher made some comment like, oh, well, if you worked really hard, if you really tried, you probably could make a longer movie. And I took that to mean incorrectly, that she was taking a shot at us, saying like, oh, well, kids can't make movies. And so I then spent the next 3 years of my life making my first project. And I wrote a script, and I, got a team together, and it was really liberating to be able to add something to my identity, to be able to say, okay, I'm Miles and I'm all these things. I am making a film. That's who I am. That's what I'm all about. And suddenly explaining something about your disability and what you're going through with that starts making it further and further and further down the list.
Oh, that is so cool.
Right. And then I'm confident, and I'm making friends easier, and everything starts to change for me. So I loved, Mel Brooks comedies, and I loved Airplane, and The Naked Gun and things like that. So I would make all these comedies and really goofy movies. And then the idea for Under the Lights comes along, and it starts to become a question of, okay, what can I do with this skill that I have and make it count? And what I tell people is that I've now spent so much time uniting the film and advocacy that I no longer know what my life would be like without Under the Lights, because we're talking about like half my adult life now dedicated to these two endeavors.
Yeah.
And I start to wonder, if I could go back and not have seizures, just completely undo my diagnosis and all the time that I've lost, would I do it? For my parents' sake, of course. But for me, having now gotten to be on this pretty cool adventure, and gotten to know my community, and be of service, and take something that has been hard for me and make it really worthwhile, I start to wonder, I don't know if I would change anything.
Yeah.
This this has been pretty remarkable.
At the beginning of that story, you cut out a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So start with how you got started making short films, with the teacher thing, and then find like a stopping point to give us the very beginning.
Yeah. I got interested in filmmaking officially in high school. We had this class, this short form 2-week class to make a short film, and they would be like 1-2 minute projects, and I acted in it, and I got so enamored with the whole thing that I wanted to really, really go, head on and make a project that was all mine. And I had a teacher say something to the effect of, "Oh, well, you could probably make a longer form movie if you really tried." And I took that incorrectly to mean, "Oh, you're a child, and teenagers don't make real films for a reason." And so I got all offended and wanted to make a movie.
That's awesome. Wow, that's great. So Miles, tell me, what would be advice that you would give a young filmmaker or artist who has disabilities, and it can be epilepsy specific or disabilities in general?
I would say that the very best story that you can possibly tell is, without a doubt, the scariest one. If you want to tell your best story, I promise you, your best story is the journal entry that you would never, ever, ever let a living soul read.
Oh, that is so good.
That is your best story. So the content of Under the Lights is all these feelings that I was never just going to like sit down and tell people about. It wasn't necessarily that I'm hiding them, but it's very uncomfortable. And then in the feature, of course, I put stuff in there that I probably haven't told anybody before, And so that's what people respond to. Comedy, people argue that drama is easier than comedy. That's crap. That's crap. If you tell a joke, I don't care what your sense of humor is. Someone in the movie theater has the same sense of humor as you.
Yeah.
Comedy, you recognize off the bat that everybody's a little different. It's all taste. With drama, if you don't hit that bullseye of that shared universal human experience, it's not going to work. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so if you can bust out the tears and write down exactly what you're feeling, you can't fake it. So that's my advice. Tell the story that you don't want to tell.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of how that also can apply to any of the arts, like, painting or music. All of them, you hear about, like, invest yourself, pour your heart out into your art and find that authenticity. And I just love the way that you framed it with, like, the thing that makes you scared, the thing that makes you uncomfortable. That's where the magic happens. That's such good stuff.
That's where the magic happens, but it's so much more than that. Let's talk about why art at all. Why do we bother, Jeremy? Why do we bother? This is not the financial move. This is not, let's back up for a bit. Let's like take a little bird's eye view with this action. I don't care what your art form is. We're starting to have conversations about AI. Art is very democratized, even without AI. And all of these things can be wonderful things. But the fact of the matter is, we live in a very, very different time than when our grandparents would have been nervous to encourage their kids to go into the arts. Very different time. If you're not doing this to serve your own sense of fulfillment, you should quit.
Yeah.
You should quit, because that's what this is for. That's what this is for. this is a means of healing. So, my journal entry comment, if you do that, if you're brave, you heal inside and you also heal others. And that's the gift. That's what the art is for. It's the pursuit of getting up in the morning and feeling like it's worth it.
Yeah.
Feeling like it matters that you get out of bed in the morning. So if your whole reason for art is to be recognized or validated, then you're not only going to crash and burn, but you're going to, it's not going to end well. It's just not.
And all artists need some of that. Please validate us. But yeah, at the end of the day,
says two people on a podcast, right?
Right.
Me and my high horse, right?
I love in your story how you talk about a bit of a left turn with you were doing these comedy stuffs and doing the things that like you liked to watch, but then you found this other thing that, number one, resonated with the people you were talking to and they were giving you feedback, and then two, as you started doing it, was resonating with you and your need and this like uncomfortable story and all the uncomfortable elements of the story that needed to be shared. And I experienced that as an artist myself, how like, this is the thing that I want to do, this is the thing that I'm pursuing, but this thing over here that I wasn't even trying at or thinking of or whatever, that's what connects. And then going through that process reveals things, at least speaking for myself, that I didn't know were there and that were both beneficial to me, the artist, to go through them, and for the audience that I'm sharing it with.
That's also the way to ensure there is an audience.
Yes.
Is if your work is truthful and not manufactured. I think that if you have, that's the other advice is really to ask yourself, what is it that you have to say? And if it is truly your voice, then it will be unique, because only you can say what it is that you have to say, right? Only you can share your feelings. And that is hard. That is hard. I don't regret my silly comedies and stuff like that. It's all very necessary, and I hope to do it again. But, you have to be in touch with that.
Yeah. Well, Miles, it has been absolutely amazing speaking with you. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom and your experiences. And Under the Lights isn't out yet, but people should definitely be having it on their radar for when it comes out. They go check out the feature. But you have a short film that people can check out now to see what the feature is going to be like. Where can people check that out?
So you can see all this fan art and information on what's coming and all this stuff that I just shared at Under the Lights Film on Instagram and Facebook, or you can go to underthelightsfilm.com and toss your email address in there and you'll get updates, and you can be of the first to see the movie when it comes out. How about that?
Yeah. And I have to say, as one of those people who gets those updates, there's not like tons of spam and stuff like that. It's only important stuff. And so the updates are really cool. And every time I get one, I'm like, all right, this project that I'm cheering for is one step further along the road. So I definitely encourage everybody to go check that out and sign up for those updates. So thank you, everybody, for joining in. Thank you, Miles, for being here. And we will catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Able Voices is a production of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education, led by me, Dr. Rhoda Bernard, the founding managing director. It is produced by Daniel Martinez del Campo. The intro music is by Kai Levin, and our closing song is by Sebastian Batista. Kai and Sebastian are students in the arts education programs at the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education. If you would like to learn more about our work, Find us online at berklee.edu/BIAAE or email us at BIAAE@berklee, that's LEE.edu.